Thanks for coming this afternoon. On behalf of Director Richard Gray, I'd like to welcome you to the first DPS Monthly Update. This will be a monthly event, an opportunity for the Department of Public Safety and its 8 divisions to share what's going on. We'll highlight some metrics and some measurables that are occurring in the department in general, and let you know more about what we do on a daily basis. As I said, the director here would like to welcome you. We are made up of over 3,300 employees. We're the largest department in the city of St. Louis, comprised of 8 divisions: building, SEMA, corrections, excise, fire, the Metropolitan Police Department, neighborhood stabilization, and the Office of Special Events. Our mission is to use the resources to safeguard the city's state of well-being. We want to protect and take care of the folks who live here and the people who visit on a daily basis, as well as the people who work here. Together we strive to be a premier municipal public safety department. We'll start off with excise today. 7 of our 8 divisions will present today. We'll not have a presentation from the neighborhood stabilization team today, but they'll present in the future most likely. So as I said, we'll start with Commissioner Robert Krayberg of Excise.
Hello, I'm Bob is my name, Booze is my game. Krayberg here is what. This is all about booze. Why they call it the excise division, I don't know. It has to do with back in the day when we collected excise taxes and so forth, but really liquor control is probably the better way to define what we do. In liquor control, our mission is to efficiently and expeditiously promote public safety by consistent and fair administration of the liquor laws through enforcement, education, voluntary compliance, responsible sales, and preventing the misuse of alcohol as it affects the quality of life in the neighborhoods of the city of St. Louis. The excise division, or liquor control, our licensing is broken down into 2 main categories. There are drink licenses, whereby people can actually consume on the premises. That would be your bars, restaurants, and nightclubs. And then the other category is the package license, where there is no consumption allowed on the premises, and any liquor that is obtained is removed from the premises and consumed somewhere else. There are approximately 980 drink licenses throughout the city and approximately 195 package licenses. And those 2 categories are broken down into subcategories. For example, there's a 5% drink, which would be a beer-only license. There's a 22%. And then there is the full drink license, which allows for the sale of any type of liquor. Packages are the same way. There are subcategories under each of those licenses. This is a chart that shows new liquor applications over the past since 2009 through 2014. You can see that they've decreased somewhat, and I don't know what that means. I'm not analyzing, but I believe it probably has something to do with the recent downturn in the economy, that people have just not decided to take the risks and to go into business. This is one of the phenomena. These lines kind of stay close to each other. The openings and the closings of liquor establishments. Most of the liquor establishments that we have and the new licenses that are issued are not issued to new premises. There are some, of course, but it's usually turnover. The bar restaurant business is notorious for turning over. And one of the weird phenomena that I've seen about it is that no matter if the previous guy or the previous 2 owners have not done well, there always seems to be 10 guys standing in line who want to open up a bar. And so we've seen this over the years that you know, the one place will go out and somebody will want to put a new license in there right behind them, regardless of the previous success. Applications that are abandoned are denied. Again, people will often make applications and not be able to get the license, and it's usually the reason why people don't get licenses is because of the neighborhood. The City of St. Louis allows the stakeholders, the people who are most affected by the presence of a liquor license, to have the most say in whether a license is issued. They are the stakeholders, the people who own property in the immediate vicinity of a licensed premises, the registered voters who are in the immediate proximity, and the licensed businesses. So the applicant has to obtain the signatures of a majority of property owners and a majority of the combination of registered voters and businesses. So it's not a bureaucratic decision when it comes to issuing a license. If the applicants don't convince their neighbors that it's a good idea, the license won't be issued. So a lot of these things get controversial. Obviously, if a bar operator doesn't have a good impact on the neighborhood, that neighborhood would probably be reluctant to sign up for someone else. So it's kind of a checks and balances effect. Also, the excise division, we mediate problems. We like to put out fires or problems that are small problems before they develop. A lot of these times things get personal and emotional, and the sooner that we can intercede and try to work things out, the better outcomes that we get. Our investigations, I have 3 liquor agents who are able to do investigations of various types in bars and nightclubs, and we've tried over the past couple of years to even step it up more, to get out into more establishments, and we operate mostly on complaint, either from the police department, the aldermen, and neighborhood association, citizen service bureau types of complaints. I guess we're probably different than other types of inspectors because the problem that was experienced last night may not even exist by the time that we go out. The nature of alcohol and the effect it has on some people. Some of the best times I've ever had in my life were at a bar, I'll tell you that. I'm not going to tell you that I'm some kind of a prohibitionist or anything, but a lot of these things, it's difficult to pin down because it's based on someone's behavior at the moment, and that may not be terribly consistent. But once again, the neighbors have probably the greatest amount of influence in this process than anyone in City Hall has. Well, if you have any questions later, I'll be glad to answer them for you. And thank you very much.
Okay, I'm Frank Oswald. I'm the building commissioner for the City of St. Louis. I wanted to talk to you folks just a few minutes about basically what the building division does and our functions. Our primary objective, our mission statement, is to streamline the permit process, making it more efficient, responsive to customer needs, thereby producing increased customer satisfaction in a climate conducive to development. So the building division is essentially about, we have, I believe at the moment, 197 employees. We do quite a variety of functions. We do, obviously, building permits. We do the reviews of those permits, make sure that people, when they're building a deck, when they're doing a room addition, that they're doing it code compliant with the national accepted standards. We do occupancy permits for both commercial and residential. We have a section that does lead inspections, and we do lead remediation for people who are unable to, have a safe environment for their children and stuff, and we actually provide a lot of those services free of charge. We also work with our community development agency in doing our healthy home program to assist seniors and people in meeting code requirements and needs, basic housing needs. And we also, do community functions such as boarding up vacant buildings and demolition of vacant buildings. So that's just kind of an overview of what we do. What I want to try and get into now is just some of the numbers, the metrics as far as what we do and how it impacts the community, that kind of stuff. Our permits section in fiscal 14 here, the value of the total value of the building permits, which is the third from the left line over at the bottom, is the important number I want you to notice. We did $635.6 million worth of construction permits. That's construction within the city of St. Louis. That's a pretty sizable number and a lot of activity. The city has quite a bit of stuff going on a regular basis, and I think this demonstrates it pretty significantly. You can see in our graph here that it's interesting from year to year. You've got fiscal 13 versus 14. Obviously, we've had a little better year this last year than the previous year, and I think this is a good indication too that the city and the country is coming out of the economic, slowdown that we had during, the 09, 08, 07 years, that kind of stuff. But you can see that tends to be no particular pattern showing, that this is the construction season or that's the construction season. A lot of people think that, this year has just been kind of the opposite of the previous year. So that's just kind of the way it goes. But again, it's a good indication of what's actually going on. This is a really interesting slide. A lot of people feel that, all the construction activity may be allocated to a particular area. This shows that obviously the central West End, where we've got the IKEA store going up and where we have a lot of activity, a lot of residential activity, a lot of commercial activity, is by far the largest. Obviously, downtown has a lot of permits. There's $75 million worth of permits downtown this last year. The Midtown area, obviously, and you get into Forest Park. Well, Forest Park at $21 million worth of activity. You've got the zoo in there, you've got the art museum expansion and all that kind of stuff. So you've got a lot of good stuff going on. I think the interesting one is the near North Riverfront with $14.7 million. That's going to be the area around the new bridge in that Ward 5 area up there. It's a good indicator that there's a lot of economic activity on our north side as well. I like this slide because this, does demonstrate what I'm talking about. The number of north side wards is, I think there was 8 north side wards versus 13 south side wards. There's more south side wards is my point. So those wards down the center core of our city obviously take the bulk of it, but there's actually more construction activity and more permit dollars going on the north side than there are on the south side, contrary to what a lot of people, or believe for whatever reasons. This is something I just wanted to bring to people's attention. One of the things we try and keep track of nowadays is, permits that are green in nature, permits that are stuff that, are eco-friendly to us. The program that I believe it was this Ameren had, in which you received a certain amount of funding back if you installed solar panels, was highly successful. This past year we had we had 60 permits issued worth $2.5 million, and we also had one new home that was built to, I believe it was a green LEED level as a silver or something like that. So anyway, this is something we call our home builders report, and what this is something we've kept track of for many years. We've developed it with the Home Builders Association, and what this is showing is all the permits that are essentially under that are over $30,000. It takes out all of the small permits where somebody does a deck or somebody does, something relatively small in their backyard, or, some rehab on their building. So it's showing the big stuff that's actually happening. And just in the home builders category, which again is your larger stuff, you had $550 million worth of permit activity, which again is a good sign for our economy. Again, this is the part of our home builders report. This is showing the actual number of units that were created. And you can see, that, we created actually 4,678 units this past year. That's an increase over the last year, and that's a real good sign as well. This, goes into the specifics as far as the type of units that were created. You can see we did have a number of rehab units that were done based upon multifamily units. Again, I think this is a sign that an indicator that the economy is a little healthier. Home prices are going up, and when home prices go up, we all know the rental market tends to go, and more investors get involved in that kind of stuff. Something else that I think is interesting that I wanted to bring to your attention today is the demolition activity in the city of St. Louis. You can see, based upon this pie chart here, that there's a reasonable slice of that demolition activity that is actually done by the city. The city also has the Land Realization Authority, which, receives buildings based upon the fact that nobody else wants them. They've gone on the courthouse steps, nobody's built them, so the city ends up with them whether we like it or not. What's interesting is if you look at the actual amount of demolition that is done in the city, and it's based upon the cost of the demolition, the private market by far exceeds what the city is doing by any stretch. That again is a good indication that people are taking stuff, businesses and that type of commercial activity, when they take something down, they're doing it, and they're doing it for the reason of building something back in that particular location and place. I think I talked in the very beginning about lead just a little bit, and I wanted to just explain how important this program is. The city of St. Louis, about 15 years ago, had a lead poisoning rate of children under the age of 5, and I believe that rate was in the 22-23% range. Today that rate is just under 3%. That's a significant change in the health of children who clearly, are our next generation. Kids who are, lead poisoned tend to have, problems learning in school. They tend to have behavior problems, all that kind of stuff. So the fact that we have been able to get a lot of federal money to do this program and to proactively change what the environment that these kids live in is a significant success on the city side. And you can see that, just in this last year we had 147 units that we did, and again, most of our stuff that we do is on a proactive basis. Prior to that child being lead poisoned, we try to get in there and actually get that done. And you can see in this pie chart, it demonstrates this pretty well, that all the units that we've designated lead safe by different, by our different categories. This is the slide I was speaking about that really demonstrates, by source, the various type of complaints and, things that we get prior to a child being actually lead poisoned. The yellow there says EBL, 6.2%. EBL stands for elevated blood level. That's the group that, unfortunately, those children have already been exposed to lead. They already are showing some signs. So what we want to do is continue to see that group, decrease, and we've had it decrease tremendously. Okay, that's kind of just a summary of the building division's activities, and I thank you for your time.
I'd like to ask just one more. On the Let's Save program, have people who own homes and they rent them out.
Yes.
How do you control the people
It's a good question. First of all, the city is got a program called the Housing Conservation Inspection Program. So you're required to have an inspection of the unit prior to somebody moving in. Every one of our building inspectors who does an inspection has already gone through a basic lead risk analysis training. So if there's any indications that that particular unit has peeling paint, flaking paint, that kind of stuff, what they do is they go ahead and they refer to our lead inspection section. These particular people, men and ladies, have all of the required lead licenses by the state of Missouri, and they carry an XRF, which is a very expensive piece of equipment that you can put on a piece of wall or paint or floor or ceiling or whatever, and it tells you, it gives you an analysis of how much lead is there. So our objective is to try to do that beforehand. And our so we look at it, we inspect it, and our programs are such that, if you as a landlord have tenants in there and you have a child in there, we encourage you to call us, or we encourage the parents to call us. The cost of this stuff is usually borne through our grants. The federal government requires us to look at the income of the tenants, not necessarily the owner. Now, if the unit is vacant and the city is inspecting it and you got issues, we make you pay for it. If the unit has a child in it, our objective is to get that place as safe as possible, as quick as possible.
So basically, if an owner has a property, the inspector should inspect it before a permit or?
Before somebody moves in, yes.
But it doesn't happen that way.
Not always, no. No, there's a lot of landlords who don't do it that way.
Well, there are a lot of people who don't know too how, that they have lead paint or
Right.
to call.
Right.
I mean, it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah, it does. So that's why we try to have both, proactive and reactive stuff as much as possible. Thank you.
Afternoon. My name is Gary Chrisman. I'm the Commissioner of the St. Louis City Emergency Management Agency. And I'm going to give you a little highlight of what the Emergency Management Agency is in the City of St. Louis, how we coordinate with other agencies, and how we plan for different types of events. The mission statement of the City of St. Louis Emergency Management Agency is to support our citizens, first responders, and supporting partners by ensuring that as a unified command, the city, we work together to build, sustain, and improve our capabilities to prepare for, to mitigate, protect against, respond to, and recover from all hazards. And that's a really important piece to look at. As emergency management, we look at the global picture. We have to look at the entire city of St. Louis and also the surrounding area to see what can possibly impact the city of St. Louis. So when we look at all hazards, we look at natural events as earthquakes, tornadoes, flooding, snowstorms, ice storms. We also look at technology, any type of utility failures. If Ameren has a large power outage or liquid gas has a shortage, those type of things, along with train derailments, the port area. And then we also look at and work with other agencies on the man-made type events like civil disobedience and terrorism and those type of things to make sure that we're addressing anything and everything that could possibly happen with inside the city of St. Louis. With emergency management, we look at 5 different phases, and those phases are prevention, preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Where we know prevention is very limited because you can't prevent a natural event from happening, necessarily can't do it on technological or man-made. So prevention kind of goes really into preparedness. And what we look at preparedness is how prepared are we as a city, as a region, as a state, and really as a country to be able to respond to all hazards. So we don't look at just our own assets or capabilities within inside the city of St. Louis, but all those partners that we also work with, and I'll talk about that in here in just a minute. But reaching out in preparedness leads right into, once we know that we're prepared, to at least be able to lessen the impact of an event. Now, how can we respond to the needs of our citizens, our guests, those that work downtown, and also be able to recover and mitigate from future disasters. And those are really important as they go in a circle because they play off of each other in how prepared we are is how good we can respond. How we respond is going to help our recovery and then lead into mitigating. So with that being said, when we look at all hazards, as I said, we don't look at just what's happening in the city of St. Louis. We have to look at what happens throughout the region, throughout the state, both on the Missouri side and also on the Illinois side, to make sure that we're working with all of our partners to ensure that we understand what networks we have in the event that we do have a disaster, we have that capability to be able to respond. So we look at our city departments, Department of Public Safety, and all of our agencies, Human Services, Department of Public Health, to make sure that we have all those partnerships together and that we're working off of the same plan. And then we start looking outside of the city of St. Louis for our regional partners. St. Louis County, St. Charles, Franklin, Jefferson County, Madison, Monroe, and St. Clair on the Illinois side, just to name a few, along with what volunteer agencies do we have? What non-for-profit agencies are going to be able to come in and help us in all those different phases? And then we also work with our state agencies to make sure that in the time that we have a disaster larger than our capabilities here in the St. Louis area, that we can, for a timely manner, be able to reach out and ask for or request state resources and state assistance depending on the type of disaster it is. And then once the state is impacted large enough, that we start looking at how our federal partners can start moving in and start helping us with resources and allocations of different capabilities. So we make sure that we have that network built at all times. That network, as we know, changes. Positions change, people move from job to job. So it's a continuous process of making sure that we have all those people at the table during all those different phases to make sure that we have the capabilities that we need to be able to respond. And one of the ones that I didn't mention that's on the slide is our medical facilities. We work very closely with all of our hospitals to make sure that if we have that large disaster that causes a mass casualty incident or even a mass fatality type incident, we have those plans in place to be able to ramp up or do a surge within the hospitals to take care of those patients that are in the need of medical resources. So a lot of what we do is planning for the what if. In the Midwest, one of our biggest challenges is that we have very little or no time to be able to react to a disaster. And what I mean by that is there's little to no notice for a disaster to happen. Earthquakes, there's no notice. Other events, explosions or mishaps within inside the city or the region happen with no notice. But those that we can plan for are summer, spring, fall, winter type storms, to where we can actually start watching those build over a period of time and start planning and start activating our plans to make sure that we are prepared as a city, as a region, and also as a state to be able to respond to the needs of those storms, depending on what type of storm they are. As we know, the weather in the Midwest is very unpredictable, and we know that things change constantly. So we make sure that we're communicating with all of our partners inside the city of St. Louis, the region, along with the National Weather Service, the media, and other agencies to make sure that we understand what is the potential of those storms. What are we looking at as the impact for the city of St. Louis and also the region, along with the state? Because as I talked about before, we rely on a lot of regional response and coordination. We rely on a lot of state and federal response and coordination, along with the National Guard and military assets. So we have to know how impacted they are and how impacted the city of St. Louis is going to be. So when we start needing those outside resources, we're not taking them away from somebody else that has a life safety issue, or we're not duplicating something that's already being done within inside the local area, the state, or even the region. So by looking at all these different events that are moving across the state, as I said, we have conference calls, we have the ability to get on the National Weather Service chat and find out what is the impact as that storm's moving across the state. There's another asset that we have, it's called WebEOC, that connects us with all the emergency responders in the state of Missouri, and also including the state government, to find out what is taking place, what resources are being dispatched, what resources are being impacted. So once again, that goes into our planning. But along with that is to make sure that our citizens know how can they prepare themselves for what's coming up. So we have a number of different ways to push out messaging through local media, through social media. We have a product called Nixle that sends out a blast text and also email that people can sign up for to find out what watches, what warnings, what is taking place in the area, and what's going to happen over the next 24, 48, 72 hours that we have to be concerned about. And then once we get past that, we get into the event. Once we're actually into the event, that's when all of our city agencies come together, either at the Emergency Operations Center or their own department, but we're still coordinating that response to make sure that we're addressing all of the needs of our citizens, our city government, and the state partners as well. So in that response, there's a lot of different phases, and I'm not going to take all the time because I'd probably need the entire day to go through all the different mass casualties, the mass fatalities, the mass care, the shelter, the response, the points of distribution, everything that comes together during that event to make sure that we have that ability to respond. And as soon as we start responding, we also have to look at how are we going to recover from this. Once that tornado hits and goes away, we know there's a lot of little disasters that happen within inside of that disaster. So we have to figure out how we're going to respond to those, but how are we recovering? How are we getting the debris removed from the streets? How are we doing building inspections? How are we getting people organized as far as volunteers go? Pulling all that together to make sure that we can get people into a safe location, but then also back into their own homes if that's possible, or into new construction later on down the road. But making sure also in that mitigation phase, working with the building department and other agencies, that we have the right building codes in place to make sure that they are retrofitted for earthquakes, or they have protection against other storms or other building codes. So by putting all those together, we know that we have plans in place. But we also know that our plans are only as good as the paper they're written on if we don't train and we don't exercise them. So we provide a lot of FEMA level courses, the Federal Emergency Management Agency courses and Homeland Security courses that we can bring together as a region, not just as a city, to train all of our first responders in the National Incident Command System and other aspects of being able to respond and preparedness and also recovery to make sure that those plans work, make sure those plans are understood, and to make sure that we're all on the same page that we respond in the same way. But along with that, as I said, we have a great Department of Public Safety. One of the things that we realize is that the citizens are really the first responders. They're the ones that are on the scene when that event happens. So we have to make sure that they are trained to take care of themselves, their family, their pets, their neighbors, and the surrounding area after that disaster. And we learned that from a lot of disasters around the United States and also around the world. So we do a lot of citizens emergency response training. We do neighborhood presentations. We reach out to all the schools, the universities, the businesses, the large gathering areas, the arenas, the muni, the zoo, and make sure that they're also trained and prepared for what happens if it happens during their open business hours. So we've done a lot of training with those agencies as well as doing exercises, looking at a scenario and saying, how are we going to respond to a catastrophic event in the city of St. Louis? How do we respond to that tornado? If it hits this part of the city, if it hits this time of day, if it hits this time of year. So everything is really incident driven with inside of emergency management, but it's really coming together to make sure that we understand how are we going to be impacted. By doing that, one of the things that we do is we look at all the after-action reports from other disasters around the United States and also around the world to find out how they responded, what worked very well, what may not have worked very well, and what didn't work at all. Taking that information and researching those emergencies and also reaching out to them to ask personal questions to find out, is our plans able to respond to that type of disaster? We don't want to wait for that disaster to happen here in the city of St. Louis and then say, ooh, our plan probably should have been changed a long time ago. There's a lot going on that we can learn from. So by working with all of those partners that we talked about and building those networks and having all these after actions and lessons learned from exercises and from real events, we can put together a really comprehensive plan to make sure that we are prepared as a city, working with the region, working with the state, working with the federal government, the non-for-profit organizations, the faith-based organizations, and also our military assets to know what we have as far as capabilities to respond to those disasters, but also to identify what is our gaps. So we can definitely fill those in a timely manner and be able to ask for those resources as needed during those different types of disasters. So we're working on a constant basis to enhance our abilities, enhance our plans, our networks, and working with our city agencies and all of our regional partners and everybody else to make sure that we're prepared as best we can for that next disaster and not wait for it to happen. So I thank you for your time, and I will pass it on to Chief Jenkerson.
Good afternoon. I'm Fire Chief Dennis Jenkerson. We'll start off with our mission statement. How are we moving here? There we go. Mission of the St. Louis Fire Department is to provide the best possible fire, rescue, and emergency medical services for the protection of life, property, commerce, and environment for the city of St. Louis. We've been doing this as a paid department since 1857. We're the second oldest paid fire department in the entire country. And I've been doing it for almost 36 years, and in my opinion, we're probably the best in the country. We do a very good job at what we are required to do and what we learn to improve on. The St. Louis Fire Department provides fire, rescue, EMS, homeland security, and emergency management services to more than 25 major events. During this time of year, this time of season, a lot of our efforts are put towards special events. This year's events include Fair St. Louis, Coleman Race, the Race for the Cure, the Soulard Mardi Gras, Annie Malone Parade, and many, many more. There's also many small neighborhood festivals that take up a lot of our time. In addition to these major events, St. Louis Fire Department resources are present at more than 600 special events throughout the year, engaging educators, students, church leaders, and career training centers, local businesses, black captains, and local elected representatives to be partners in safeties. We work very hard at prevention, and when we get further into these slides, you're going to see some of the results of these. St. Louis Fire Department has various, everybody thinks of the fire department as fire. We have a hazmat unit. We have a marine task force unit. We're responsible for the river. We cover collapse rescue. We also cover Lambert Airport, which is very busy this time of year. We also have a regional support or strike force unit that's responsible for the entire state of Missouri and can be called anywhere in the United States, which requires training year-round. St. Louis Fire Department is active in the St. Louis community on a daily basis, instituting multifaceted outreach programs. These programs enable the fire department to get important fire and life safety information and resources to the public. Our non-emergency issues and initiatives include fire inspections, familiarizations, public education activities, smoke detectors. Smoke detector program has been one of our most important programs in our entire department, and it's considered one of the top programs in the entire country on how we administer it. We also have recently got into the CO program, carbon monoxide. We also do a Are You OK senior citizen disabled call, where every morning telephone calls are made to individuals on a list and we check on them. If we don't receive a call, it calls again. If they don't answer the phone, we call a contact number, and if nobody answers, then we send a unit out to check on them. We do car seat installation, heat up and cool down St. Louis. We're about ready to get hot again in the city, so that's been a big responsibility of the fire departments in protecting senior citizens and disabled people in the city to make sure that they're safe during the hot weather. We do fire and EMS safety talks, and we provide career and hiring information. We also do quite a bit with Gary's department with CERT training, which is a big advantage to the city should we have a disaster. Just a real quick snapshot of some of the total responses of fire. This does not include EMS. You can take almost all these numbers here and we double it again, and that's our total run responsibilities within the fire and EMS department. As you can see, in 2012, we kind of had a spike in runs. Everything else, if you look at 09, 10, 11, 13, it's pretty much the same. It stays in between around 77,000 and 78,000. Again, these are actual fire calls. And now this can be anything from dumpsters to a small kitchen fire to a full raging house fire. And 2012, again, we had a spike. Everything else from 2009 to 13 is fairly consistent. Medical runs. These are medical runs that the fire department does. Okay, this does not include EMS. EMS averages about total medical runs about 78,000 calls a year. This is just the fire department's medical runs. We don't run on all of the EMS calls. So 2012, again, we had a fairly large spike. 13, we have come down, but it does stay fairly consistent. Hazmat runs. As I mentioned before, one of the responsibilities of the fire department is hazmat. We have a 24/7 dedicated hazmat unit that consists of about 4 companies. They're, again, probably one of the top hazmat companies in the entire state of Missouri. They're very well organized, very well equipped, and very well trained. Hazmat seems to be an area that is becoming more prevalent. It's more acknowledged by the citizens, if you will. It seems like the phone system, the cell phones have the ability to provide an easier access to the 911 system for the citizens. So when they see something smoking out of the back of a trailer off a tanker, and right now we have the Bakken oil, which is causing us a great concern. So we're getting quite a few calls on that. So we're taking we're trying to put as much information as we can out on the capabilities of the hazmat team. I'll give you an example. We just recently completed Fair St. Louis, 3-day event in Forest Park. What people didn't know, what people didn't see, which we don't want them to see, is the protection that we provided during that fair. We had chemical, biological, and radiation monitoring for all 3 days using the equipment we have. And it's a very sophisticated cadre of equipment, and we like the fact that people don't know we're doing it. So it's just another level of protection that makes the fire department, and especially me, feel a little bit more at ease. We also provided this type of protection for all of the All-Star game, the World Series games, and any special event that might happen in the city. So this is a very busy division of the St. Louis Fire Department. Like I said, this is a very brief snapshot on this presentation. This is kind of an overlay of some of the different responses the fire department has, from hazmat, fires, to medical calls, from 2009 to 2013. Over the last 30 years, the fire department has picked up several additional responsibilities as opposed to just fire. We never used to see carbon monoxide runs. When Laclede Gas stopped doing in-home inspections and stopped checking on furnaces, water heaters, things like that, the incident of CO started coming up and we had people dying. So that became our responsibility. So we have to carry special equipment on all of our trucks now. So that becomes part of hazmat. Fire department has been tasked with patrolling the riverfront, providing protection at all the different events like I talked about before. So we've become very busy and had to take on a fair amount of new training requirements. So average runs per year, we're hitting around 90,000 calls with the St. Louis Fire Department, with 36 firehouses in 6 districts. We're running right now about 600 firefighters and about 175 EMTs and medics. So if you look at those numbers, we're running right about 850 members total, and with 90,000 calls just on a fire, it's per capita. We provide a very quick response, and what I feel is probably the top fire protection in the entire country. So in later meetings, we'll go more into detail in what the individual task forces do, how EMS, some of their different type of runs, and we'll get deeper into that. So, thank you. Corrections? I didn't forget about it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. My name is Dale Glass. I'm the Commissioner for the Division of Corrections, and we operate out of 2 facilities. MSI, or Medium Security Institution on Hall Street. There we primarily house all the females that are incarcerated and also those that have been sentenced to serve time in the city of St. Louis, as well as those that have been charged with minor offenses. Our other location, the City Justice Center, is where we house those that have been charged with major crimes and if found guilty are transferred to either state prison or federal prison. We share that facility with the sheriffs, the police, and the bond commission. So we operate there, and it's in that location. The mission of the Division of Correction is to house citizens who are arrested by the police and are awaiting opportunity to answer the charges against them in a court of law. We ensure the safety and the security of the staff and the inmates in the custody of the Division of Corrections and provide opportunities for the inmates to become more productive citizens upon their reentry into the community. If they are released immediately to the community, we address their needs and concerns and try to prepare them for that release. And we also offer similar or same services, even if they end up being incarcerated in prison. Their needs probably would require more programming, and therefore starting at that stage is appropriate for that particular group. The average annual population, as you see on this chart, over the last couple of years has decreased. In 2012, we had an average population over the months of about 1,842. 2013, we had 1,796. And so far this year, we're running at a population of about, on average, 1,583. That fluctuates. There could be a number of reasons for that. We've put a couple of things in place that we think that have impacted our population, but certainly one might consider that reduced crime also plays a role in that, reduced crime in the city. Again, this is a look at the average population over the months for those 3 years. Our daily population as of July the 9th was 1,423, and our largest population we had back in 2007 was 2,133. I mentioned in our mission statement that we consider ourselves as having care, custody, and control of those that are incarcerated in the jail. And some of the things that we monitor or assess is how many grievances we get. And in the last month at both facilities, we had a total of 3 grievances submitted by the inmates and answered. Another interesting note I thought you might be interested in is how many sick calls or contacts we have with medical. So at both facilities, we have a total of 610 medical sick calls for last month. And in terms of meeting the needs or addressing programming for the inmates, we've partnershiped with drug court and also with mental health doc, and we think that has impacted our populations where some of those populations have been diverted. But last month alone, well, actually this is since we partnered with them starting in February, they've assessed 897 of inmates for the drug court, and some of those have been diverted to that program. I don't have those exact numbers at this time. A couple other programs that we do for the inmates is the GED program, where currently we have 43 inmates enrolled, and we're proud with the progress we're making with that particular program, because one of the issues that the inmates faced in participating in GED was that they would be either released or transferred before they were able to complete. So we set up a partnership in the community where the provider of the GED classes actually continues those classes once they're released all the way to completion of GED, and they actually have a grant to fund for that education. We also have last month 48 enrolled in anger management, and also inmates employed learning trades and skills within the facility. We had 170, and so that's what we mean by trying to prepare them for release back to the community, and that's how we see our role as contributing to the safe community. The way we accomplish that is what is important to us is how highly trained our staff are. For instance, our correctional officers attend the academy for 6 weeks, then have 2 weeks of on-the-job training, and then another 2 weeks of shadowing an experienced officer. But and then we also have 40 hours of continued training for all staff employed by the division. Some of the specialized training in the last few months, we emphasized or worked on increasing the number of staff we had that were CPR and first aid training. The fire department helped us with that mission. And for example, in March, you can see we trained 342 of our staff, and most of those being correctional officers. As a matter of fact, correctional officers represent about 45% of the staff employed for the division. And a new specialized training we are excited about that just began. We're also certifying our staff in first aid, mental health first aid training, which just started this month. So basically, that's what I wanted to present, that you might not know about the Division of Corrections and what it is we do and how we try to accomplish our task. Thank you.
We have experienced a pretty good growth of events in the city. The Office of Special Events assists every event and organizers with the process to secure all the permits, and I make sure that we communicate with the other departments and make it enjoyable for citizens and visitors. You can see the growth. This is, we just took from 2009 through 13, but you can see how many more events are in the city now than there were just even 5 years ago. This is a good thing and a bad thing. There's a lot of guys in this room who don't think this is all the best, but really more activity on the street means more happy people and maybe less bad guys. That's always the way I like to look at it. So we have a lot of parades. Parade numbers don't vary much because most of the parades are old and have been in the city, the St. Patrick's and Mardi Gras and that kind of thing. What I think is the most amazing and wonderful telling story about what's happening in our city is the increase of events in the neighborhoods over the last 5 years, and it continues to grow. It's unbelievable, and I think that it really is the most exciting and positive thing that we have going on, is the fact that the neighborhoods are getting stronger. They're getting better. Our crime rates are down, as Chief Dotson will tell you. And people feel good about where they live and what they're doing. And they like to get together and they like to play together and have stuff in their parks and block parties on their streets. And I think that this is a really, really exciting and important story that needs to be told and should be told. And you can kind of see in neighborhoods the way that things have evolved. We have, back in 2009, I think we had maybe 5 events in neighborhoods. This doesn't count churches, of course, because they are, different. But you can see the festivals and the runs are growing rapidly. Cycling events have become very popular. We don't do many cycling events, I think just one downtown, and the rest of them really are in neighborhoods because they're pretty and it's fun and the neighborhoods love having them. So it's kind of it's an interesting story, and I think it kind of tells the progress of the city, the positive progress of the city. And then we can look at the one-time major events that Dennis talked about earlier. And these are all big. All the NCAA events are big. We had a very good and busy year, the year that we celebrated the 100th anniversary of both the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. We had the Marine Corps Week, a lot of you will remember that. We had the All-Star Game, which they just had in Minneapolis, and I happened to be up there when it was going on, and I think ours was way superior. And then we're always in the World Series, so and when we win, we get to do parade. So we do a lot, and I work with all of these guys in all these different departments, and the city really does come together and put together some pretty amazing events.
I'll just jump up real quick. We're going to move on to the police department next.
Good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank Ann and Dale for giving my presentation. Fewer criminals in jail, crimes down. Great city to have events, crimes down. Thank you. Any questions? All right. So we'll go through the crime presentation as I've done it for the Board of Police Commissioners a couple of times. So the way we look at it is, and I think you all know what the police department does and who we are, and so I've really kind of abbreviated the mission statement. I wanted to give you a snapshot of what's going on in the city of St. Louis, and then at the end maybe talk a little bit about how we do interact with all of the agencies that you've seen before. Like Ann, I think we touch everybody, including corrections, and it's a great partnership that we have in the Department of Public Safety. So these are crimes that have occurred in the city of St. Louis through June. We take a snapshot at the beginning of each month to look back. So this is really what's happened for the first 6 months in the city of St. Louis. I wanted to start with a fun fact. There are the fewest number of reported robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, larcenies, and vehicle thefts in the city of St. Louis since before 1970. That's a fact that doesn't get reported a lot because our friends in the media thrive on what's happened today, and so they need to fill their newscasts. Nothing personal, Joel. The paper needs to fill their newscast with things that happen during the day, and that sells. But the reality is that crime in the city of St. Louis is at the lowest levels in most of the categories that we've seen since 1970. I always think it's important to have perspective and context, so this is a look back on crime, and crime doesn't go down in a straight line or up in a straight line. This is a look back to 1970, and as you can see, we are significantly lower in the total number of crimes that have occurred in the city of St. Louis. We're also down in the number of crimes that happen per 1,000 people. So crime is down in the city of St. Louis. Person crime, which gets a lot of attention, this is the person crime since 1970. You can see the spike in the mid-1990s, attributable mostly to the crack cocaine and the introduction of crack cocaine into the urban core, into the city, and the violence associated with that. 1993 was the largest year for aggravated assaults and homicides in the city's history. So let's look at what's happening right now in the city of St. Louis. This is a year, this first 6 months compared to of 2014 compared to the first 6 months of 2013. Murders and homicides, we've had 9 more murders in the city of St. Louis compared to the same period last year. There were 120 homicides in the city of St. Louis. The 5-year average for homicides in the city of St. Louis is 126. We will end the year hopefully under that. Our strategies, hotspot policing, our enforcement strategies around specific individuals. Homicides are one of the most difficult crimes to prevent, just for context and understanding. I'll give you a couple of examples. There have been 2 instances so far this year where parents that are responsible for their infant children contributed to the death of their children that were ruled homicides. There were 2 adult children that murdered their parents in the home, one on Easter Sunday. There are no police interventions that I knew that would have stopped either of those from occurring. It's one of the most difficult. As we move across, rape, robbery, aggravated assaults, we even see a decrease in aggravated assaults. Aggravated assaults is a precursor, obviously, to more severe violence, potentially murders and homicides. We've seen a decrease in there. Our targeted strategies are gaining traction. Burglary, larceny, vehicle thefts, all the way across. Arson, 9 different, so about 1.5 more arsons per month. Again, crime doesn't go up or down in a straight line. I don't see any patterns or trends that are alarming there. 9 additional crimes in the first 6 months. This is the total decrease of crime that has occurred in the city of St. Louis for the first 6 months. The red bar is total crime, 11.6% reduction. So that means 1,442 fewer crimes were reported in the city of St. Louis. The gold bar is property crime, things like larcenies from vehicles, burglaries, stolen autos, down 13.1%, or 1,300 fewer crimes. And then the person crime is in the blue bar, down 5.6%, or 135 fewer people victimized by violence in the city of St. Louis during the first 6 months compared to last year. These reductions, again, I want to talk about, are on top of year-over-year reductions. Going back to 2006, and people ask why we go back to 2006. In the last 10 years, 2006 was the largest year for crime. We see a 52% reduction in total crime since 2006 in the city of St. Louis. Property crime is down 54.3%, and person crime, the violence in the city of St. Louis, for the first 6 months of this year compared to the first 6 months of each year back to 2006 is down over 40%. Again, for our friends in the media, that's a story that doesn't always get told, but it is the reality, and supported by what Dale said, that fewer criminals in jail. What this means is, and somebody will ask, shouldn't it be just the opposite? Shouldn't you have more people in jail? You have to remember that the number one purpose of a law enforcement agency is to prevent crimes from occurring. So if we prevent crimes from occurring, we don't have to arrest somebody, but what we've done really is we've kept somebody from being victimized, and not having victims is absolutely what we want to accomplish. So our decrease is supported by what Dale is seeing in his correctional facility. The city of St. Louis is divided into 6 districts. Those 6 districts are spread out into 3 area stations. We have a North Patrol, a Central Patrol, and a South Patrol. As you can see, and I won't go through each of the numbers, each of the areas, each of the districts are experiencing decreases in all of the crime categories. So people will say that we've put resources into one neighborhood and not into another. This shows that we've got decreases across the city. Our targeted strategies work in most neighborhoods. That's one of the primary reasons that we redistrict the city of St. Louis on January 27th of this year. For 50 years, the city was divided into 9 police districts. Those 9 police districts no longer reflected the economic development, the population shift, a variety of factors. We thought 6 was the correct number for districts. On January 27th, we implemented that strategy for 6 districts, and it appears to be working. As I look across all 6 districts, every Thursday we have ComStat, like they do in New York. We sit down and talk about it. Calls for service, crime, reports, self-initiated activity are almost equally balanced among the 6 districts, along with people. So using a data-driven approach, we appeared to have accomplished what we wanted internally. Now this is the indicator. We have to continue to make sure that we're pushing down crime in the areas that we need to focus on. I think it's always important to have context, because I said crime doesn't go up or down in a straight line. Here, the blue line is a 5-year average for these particular crimes. The gold line is the current 12 months. As you can see, homicide up and down, sometimes above our 5-year average, sometimes below. For June, we had 7 fewer homicides than the 5-year average. For robberies, citywide, you can see all year we've remained below the 5-year average. There were 58 fewer robberies in June than the 5-year average. 86 fewer aggravated assaults in June than the 5-year average. Burglaries, 48 fewer. But here is a diagnostic tool, and this are the types of things that I look at. As you can see, that line, the gold line, is coming closer to the blue line. That tells me that we are seeing an increase in burglary activity, and that's an area of focus that we discussed this morning at our ComStat meeting. Over 400 fewer larcenies in June than the 5-year average. Vehicle thefts, 96, I think 95, 96 fewer, but again, that line is trending up, so that's something that we're going to watch and I'm going to be interested in. We'll talk about, I'll just kind of to give you context, in June, you see how in January, you see how the current year touched the 5-year average. We had a cold winter. People were leaving their keys in their car to warm up their cars. In January, we were plus 81 stolen autos because of those key steals. We've worked our way down, and as you saw in one of the previous graphs, auto theft is down for the year now, even though we got off to a rough start because people were leaving their keys in their car. And then everybody wants to talk about Forest Park. So let's talk about, we've implemented new strategies in Forest Park. Forest Park is, I believe, an anchor in the city of St. Louis. Attracts over 6 million visitors a year to the zoo, the art museum, the history museum, the Muni. Another 6 million or so use the park for softball, recreation, golfing. So about 13 million visitors a year to Forest Park. I think it deserved a little bit of attention. We've reduced crime for the first 6 months in 2014 in Forest Park by 50% compared to last year. And we're going to continue to focus on that, and I think our strategies are working. So that was a view of how we view crime in the police department. I'm very interested in benchmarks. I'm very interested in data. I'm very interested to know if our strategies are working. This is one way. We have several other ways inside the department. Again, response time, calls for service per district. But to the public, their number one question is our city safe? Are we reducing crime? And again, over the last 8 or so years, we've seen a 50% reduction in crime. So thank you very much.